All right. Well, good morning, everybody. This is Andrew with Watching and Waiting. And man, speaking of kind of watching and waiting, that describes my weekend perfectly because I've been watching all of these headlines and so forth developing across the world, and I've had to wait to be able to come on here and discuss them with you and share, what I'm seeing. And it's been kind of wild. I really kind of was itching to jump on yesterday and everything, but my weekends are my time to work on my house and to be with family and things of that nature. And kind of refresh and study and things like that. Um, so it had to wait for today. But anyway, so I wanted to come on and talk about some of the headlines and everything that we've seen over the last couple of weekends. And one of the big things that's going on, the in fact, something that just happened this morning. We've seen over the weekend the new president of Colombia was inaugurated. And God bless him and God help him and protect him, because I mean he has made a lot of enemies and he's going to make a lot more if he actually does what he says that he's going to do. And he's taken a strong stance in support of Israel and so forth. And he's an ally of Javier Milei, and so I mean, there's a lot of good things to like about this guy, but he is definitely going to need to have protection. But the other thing that happened just this morning is there was a 7.4 magnitude earthquake in Colombia, and of course reports of extensive damage and a lot of possible fatalities. So we need to definitely be in prayer for that country. But it's interesting that that sometimes they say that the things that happen in the physical world can oftentimes be a manifestation of something taking place in the spiritual world. And there was regime change basically in Venezuela, followed by earthquakes, and there's regime change in Colombia, followed by earthquakes. And there were our attacks on Iran, and Iran had earthquakes recently. So I mean, there's just kind of interesting where things have been happening like that. But regardless of it being interesting and everything, we definitely need to be in prayer for the people of Colombia. Um, but one of the things that I've heard before, and I don't remember if it is um, like an analogy to something in Scripture, or whatever, but or if it's just something that somebody smarter and wiser than me said. But basically, like that in the end times, Israel is going to be all over the news. They're going to be 100% in the headlines, and that's one of the things we saw this weekend, was that just every single major international headline and so forth had some sort of connection back to Israel and some sort of relation to Israel, or it was something that Israel was doing. And um, and so yeah, so one of the things that happened, and it's been kind of developing over the course of the weekend, including into today, is this rejection by Israel of the Board of Peace, Gaza Peace framework, which the framework itself, and this is something that the Board of Peace, said this morning. Um, the basis of Israel's rejection of it is that they're like, we're not going to do anything as far as withdrawing or anything else until Hamas is disarmed. And the Board of Peace came out this morning and said, what? Actually, the framework does support that. You're not, Israel is not obligated to do anything until Hamas disarms. And so, and the thing is, we know that's never going to happen. I mean, it's just never going to happen. These people never, make an agreement in good faith, and they never, they're never going to disarm, especially at all, in my opinion, but especially not in any really meaningful way. So the along with that same sort of headline where Israel was rejecting that agreement, they also Netanyahu said that as long as he is prime minister, there isn't going to be a two-state solution. And I completely agree and understand why he feels that way. I mean, we've had two-state solutions in that area before. In 1948, there was a two-state solution, and they attacked Israel. And in 2005, there was another two-state solution, and they attacked Israel. So every time they've had the opportunity to have their own state and to have their own land and everything else, they've chosen instead to attack Israel. So, yeah, I think it's a lost cause in that respect. But and then but the bigger thing about that, and what we see is that Trump's effort to expand the Abraham Accords. Most recently, speaking with Saudi Arabia and meeting with Saudi Arabia, uh, they Saudi Arabia basically said, "Look, we're not going to do the Abraham Accords until there's a meaningful, movement in the direction of a two-state solution in Palestine." And so without that, and with Netanyahu's just blatant rejection of a two-state solution, the expansion of the Abraham Accords to include Saudi Arabia is is on its deathbed. Now, one of the other interesting kind of things going on is, of course, Israel is in the midst of an election campaign right now. The elections are set for October. Netanyahu, of course, is seeking to hold on to his coalition government and so forth. But and I have no idea. I mean, I haven't seen any polling or anything to know how that's going. But and it's probably too early anyway. But it's interesting, so you have to factor that in when you're kind of looking at pronouncements and everything that are being made, by Netanyahu or others, and everything. So one of the other things that we see going on is that Iran is playing the tough guy role in the Strait of Hormuz. They're actually mocking President Trump and everything with the I think it was Galibaf who came out and said, "Big attack incoming," and then he said, "Oh wait, no, never mind." And he actually posted this on social media, and and it's been very frustrating. I on one hand, whenever this whole thing began, I was hopeful that Trump was going to follow through with everything and have it planned, well, and everything, and everything was just going to work out. And I thought, man, if this happens, if we actually are successful with all of this, with the goals that they set, this is going to reset stuff in the Middle East for 150 years or whatever. And, and I was kind of hopeful for that in some ways, but obviously should have known better. I mean, it was not going to happen. And I got to say, there have been multiple examples of some actions that the Trump administration has taken militarily that have actually been spectacular. The taking out Maduro in Venezuela, the way that they handled that, beautiful, is perfection. The initial attack on Iran, with back in June of 2025, handled perfectly. Limited, tough, and effective, and everything, and done with absolute secrecy. I mean, it was perfect. Um, so we've seen things like that, but then, so it kind of gave me hope that we were going to go into this conflict and it was going to be well planned and well prepared, and we were going to have everything that we needed to do whatever we needed to do in that region, and for both political reasons and just, I don't know, some inexplicable lapse of understanding and preparation. We've ended up in this situation where we don't have enough weapons, and we don't have enough people, and we don't have enough this, and we wasted a crap ton of time talking, and everything. And there's just this complete lack of understanding among some in the administration, including the president, that this is a spiritual thing. This is not a normal negotiation. This is not a normal conflict. This is not a normal war. This is, it's like, if you don't just unleash everything and just do whatever you have to do in order to achieve our stated goals, okay, then half measures and strikes here and there again, whatever, it's not going to work. You need to follow Israel's example. You need to do what works, and they just don't have the political will, or the understanding of exactly what their enemy is. To be able to do that. So, and I voted for Trump, and I support Trump, and I think that the majority of the things that this administration are doing is a good thing for America. But we would have been. I think the world, in many respects, would have been better off just not even starting this if they're not going to do what they need to do to finish it up. And but the thing is one thing it has done, and this is, I think, undeniable, is it has moved the prophecy window forward. Okay, everything that we see things happening in the Middle East through these headlines and everything that are, setting things up for the tribulation. And we know that, or believe that prior to the tribulation, there's going to be the rapture of the church. And just more and more things are all being lined up, pointing to this tribulation. We see Israel shoring up their border, in particular around Syria. They've completed construction of some border implements and everything there, where they a 13-foot deep and 13-foot wide trench, that runs the entire length of the border with Syria, which is of course intended to be an impediment to tanks and ground invasion. Okay, and so if anything, if nothing else, it slows it down. As opposed to just having open terrain to cross. We see that Israel has reiterated again over the weekend their willingness to go it alone against Iran, which maybe they need to do that. But Israel, more and more with situations like that, is being cast as this burdensome stone, which we know from Scripture is a role that they are going to fulfill in the last days. We see one of the big things that happened over the weekend was the signing of this agreement between Turkey, Pakistan, and Saudi Arabia for a mutual defense agreement, very similar to what NATO has. An attack on one is an attack on all. And, you've got this situation where, Pakistan has one of the largest armies, one of the largest standing armies in the Muslim world. They are one of the few nuclear powers in the Muslim world. And so you've got that with them. You have money and oil with Saudi Arabia. You have Turkey also, massive population, massive economic power, positioned at a choke point of the world, regional ambition, and just Erdogan aspires to be, a great Muslim leader and everything else. It's so that those three coming together in a mutual defense pact and everything is kind of is definitely interesting, and it may not necessarily overtly say anything about Israel, but it is definitely something that's building both towards the Psalm 83 conflict and to the Ezekiel 38 war, both of which I believe happened during the tribulation. And we're seeing, again, it's not like this is just about to happen right this second, but we see that the chess pieces are being moved on the board to position themselves for these things. And then, according to my belief and the belief of many others, the rapture comes before all of that. So it's just interesting to see what's going on with all of that and how that's developing. There was also a story that I saw, and I think a lot of these are from Bubba News on Telegram, and Amir Sarfati and Israel Today, and Hanania Naftali and various other people. And I'm looking at people, places on X, CNN, of course, and Fox News is reporting a lot of these things too. But the um, the war of words that you have between Israel and Turkey, continues to it's not necessarily ramping up. It's just continuing at the high level that it has been, for a couple of months now. And one of the things I also saw was that Turkey, there's a Turkish citizen who is a major player in Al Qaeda. He was a major Al Qaeda commander, and now he has been placed in a senior military position in Syria. So you're seeing more and more this coordination, and this kind of interconnectedness between these various Arab powers, Syria, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Turkey, etc. And Turkey is at the center of a lot of this, and I think that's incredibly interesting, and definitely is casting shadows towards the tribulation and everything, in the not too distant future. So so it's just one after another. Just this whole weekend, there were these stories coming out about things going on, and it's all pointing towards the pieces, being moved on the board to set things up for the tribulation. And like I said, the closer we are to the tribulation, the closer we are to the rapture of the church. So definitely be watching, be watchful, and see, and notice and see the things that are going on in the world, and what they can mean and do mean, with respect to our timing and the prophetic calendar and everything else. Again, we are empowered with the ability to see things and to reason and to know when we're in the season for the rapture, and we are definitely there. And so we continue to wait for our blessed hope and everything, but we watch and have everything ready, make ourselves ready to receive the bridegroom when he comes to take us. So I hope that all of y'all are doing great. I hope you have a fantastic week ahead with whatever you're doing. I know school's getting started back again, and obviously people going to work and everything else. So I hope that y'all have just a blessed week. I'm sure I'll be on again. But let me know what you're thinking about these headlines and everything that's taking place in the world, and just keep on keeping on. All right, be blessed. Have a good day.